a major change came in the form of the Regulating Act of 1773. Why is this significant? Because it was the first attempt of the British Parliament or government to interfere in the company's activities in India. As the name suggests, it was meant to regulate the company's activities in India. Okay? What were the circumstances behind this? Twofold circumstances. First of all, the changing nature of the British economy was creating a number of business pressures which were having their effect in Indian administration also. And second issue kya tha? The changing public perception towards the company and its officials. They were being seen more and more as corrupt. ठीक है? अच्छा. Major change क्या हुआ था British economy में? The beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Right? Now, here, because of this, a new class of very influential individuals is going to emerge in Britain. Kaun? The capitalists, right? Now, capitalists, are they going to be in favor of the continuation of the company's monopoly, or will they want the company's monopoly to end? End. Kyun? Company, by establishing its monopoly, is acting as a middleman between India and Britain. The capitalists want direct access to Indian market and they want to purchase Indian goods as cheaply as possible. Company middleman बन के उसमें अपना commission maximize कर रहा है. They want the company's influence to be eradicated. ठीक है? And thus, with this, voices within the parliamentary democratic system of Britain also started to act against the company. एक movement emerge हुआ known as the free trade movement. Now, it emerged in the 1760s itself with the emergence of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But as the Industrial Revolution accelerated more and more, it became bigger and bigger. Free trade movement is going to become stronger and stronger. And with the passage of time, you will find the erosion of the company's monopoly, right? And its discretion in India. You will find increasing government oversight and control till ultimately in 1858 company का role ही खत्म कर दिया जाएगा and direct British rule is going to be instituted. ठीक है? So one major change was this, the Industrial Revolution. Second was the changing public perception with regards to the company in India. What had the company been established as? As a trading company. What was its purpose? To maximize profits for its shareholders. But what had it gotten itself involved in? Wars, ruling, right? It had emerged as a political power. Now, this should all have resulted in maximization of profits. But reality में क्या हो रहा था? The company was on the verge of bankruptcy, right? People were extremely curious, and because of the big money interest by of the capitalists, इसको publicity भी बहुत ज़्यादा मिल रही थी इस issue को, right? And new narratives were woven around the company's officials. तो English newspapers में satires बनते थे, cartoons बनते थे, right? और वहाँ पे कंपनी के corrupt officials को किस तरह से दिखाया जाता था? As Nawabs themselves. The British came up coined a new term, नवाब, जहाँ पे कार्टून में कंपनी ऑफिशियल को दिखाया जाएगा कि पालकी में बैठ के जा रहे हैं, पान चबाते हुए इधर थूक रहे हैं उधर थूक रहे हैं, दे आर लिविंग अ लाइफ ऑफ लग्जरी, हाथी के ऊपर बैठ के जा रहे हैं, वाइल द कॉमन इंग्लिश पर्सन इज शोन इन कॉन्ट्रास्ट कि वो रात दिन काम करके थोड़े बहुत चंद पैसे लेके आ रहा है, एंड दे आर बीइंग टैक्स्ड, द कॉमन इंग्लिश मैन इज बीइंग टैक्स्ड बाय द British, right? So public perception started to shift, and because Britain was increasingly becoming more and more democratic, public perception was becoming increasingly more and more important, relevant. ठीक है? Therefore, the Parliament had to respond. When the company applied for a loan from the government, उन्होंने बोला कि हाँ चलो लोन तो दे देंगे, we are going to save your skins, but लोन के साथ you will have to also accept certain conditions. And as part of those conditions, ये जो रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट ऑफ 1773 है, दैट वाज इनैक्टेड. ठीक है? व्हाट आर द प्रोविजंस ऑफ दिस रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट? क्या क्या है? द गवर्नर of Bengal would from henceforth be called the Governor General of Bengal, with supervising powers over the other presidencies. He is not going to govern on his own. Unilateral governance nahi hoga. Rather, he is going to act in council. Along with the Governor General, there is going to be a council of 4 other members. The act also nominated the 4 initial members, लेकिन वो बाद में बदले भी गए. ठीक है? These were Bearwell, Francis, Monson and Clavering. What was the basis on which they functioned? Majority voting के principle पे function करते थे. Right? The governors of Madras and Bombay presidencies were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. The act also provided for the establishment of a Supreme Court at Calcutta, which was later established in 1774, the next year. First Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Sir Elijah Impey. But there were certain doubts regarding the jurisdiction of this particular court. They were resolved through the Amending Act of 1781. क्या decide किया गया? That it would not have jurisdiction across the territory of British India. Rather, its jurisdiction would be limited to the city limits of Calcutta, and it would extend only upon the British or Europeans living in India. Okay? The Amending Act fixed the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to the city limits of Calcutta and to Europeans only. And lastly, East India Company officials were prohibited from taking bribes or gifts. Okay? What is the significance of the Regulating Act of 1773? It was the first attempt by the British Parliament to intervene in the company's activities in India. It announced the beginning of the free trade movement and was the first in a series of steps which the British Parliament and government would take over the next half century and more to completely erode the company's monopoly and even the company's rule in India. It was the first of many steps to end the company's monopoly and rule in India. It also provided the basis for India's future administrative centralization and political unification. How? By bringing Bombay and Madras under the subordination of the Presidency of Bengal. Fifthly, it was the first instance where the British government and British Parliament became directly involved with the governance of India, even if it was in an indirect manner. And with its creation of the Supreme Court of Calcutta, it represented the first instance of the introduction of British extraterritoriality as well as the Anglican system of jurisprudence on Indian land for the first time. Extraterritoriality क्या होता है? That certain sections of people are not going to be subjected to the ordinary land law of the land. This was especially true in the case of colonialism. So British, for example, in India, especially under British rule, were judged according to British laws. ठीक है, इसको बोलते हैं extraterritoriality. And the introduction of these British laws in India later is going to become the basis for the anglicization of the entire judicial machinery and the legal system. So it was the beginning of extraterritoriality and introduction of the Anglican system of jurisprudence. By prohibiting company officials from accepting gifts or bribes, the foundational values of the future civil service in India were also laid by this act. ठीक है, ये तो सब पॉजिटिव चीजें हैं, कुछ लिमिटेशंस भी थे या नहीं? बताओ, अरे कुछ सोच सकते हो क्या लिमिटेशंस रहे होंगे? अरे देखो, एक तो प्रॉब्लम था with the system of majority voting, it is going to create a lot of friction later on. ठीक है, flawed system of majority voting leading to friction and policy paralysis. कैसे? For any resolution to be passed in the council, the governor general would require the support of at least 2 more councillors, right? लेकिन एक situation emerge हुआ that एक group emerge हो गया within the councillors of 3 against the governor general. तो governor general कोई भी resolution introduce करता था, 3 of them would group together to defeat it. That is why it had to be rectified in the Pitt's India Act of 1784. ठीक है, तो वहां पे जो एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल का स्ट्रेंथ है that was reduced from 4 to 3. Therefore, now the governor general would require the support of only 1 more councillor, and he was also given the casting vote in order to break the tie. Secondly, the administrative centralization or increasing control of the British Parliament and government over the company's officials in India, they were quite limited in nature. Why? Because of practical limitations of 18th century transport and communications. ठीक है, तो बंगाल से अगर बॉम्बे कोई ऑर्डर भेजना होता या फिर कोई रिस्पॉन्स एलिसिट करना होता, so it would take the better part of 3 months, right? So is the Governor General of Bengal going to maintain any effective oversight over the governors of Bombay or Madras? नहीं हो सकता. Same is going to be the case between India and the company's officials back home. और क्या limitations बताइए? What else? अरे, although it had made a step against the company's monopoly, it had not taken any concrete step to eradicate the monopoly at all. In fact, the Regulating Act of 1773 had confirmed the monopolistic rights of the company. And from now on, in succeeding charter acts, the company's monopoly is going to be automatically resolved every 20 years or so. Okay? So it had perpetuated the company's monopoly also. These were the limitations associated with this act. They deprived Indians of the liberal laws of England. अंग्रेज ऐसा बोले तो अच्छा लगता है हम लोग नहीं बोलेंगे. हाँ, तो आप ये बोल सकते हो that English jurisprudence, which was at the cutting edge of the modern intellectual movement, may have benefited Indians, but the British chose not to introduce it all over India. But I don't know कि वो कितना valid होगा argument. ठीक है? So these were the limitations.